Cartoons always refine their art style the longer they go on. For example, Gumball went through some adjustments in the first 3 seasons before finally locking in, as they continued to experiment and land on a look that made production easier while keeping the characters as expressive as possible. The Fairly Odd Parents also comes to mind when I think of a show that evolved from a looser style to something more consistent and iconic. But sometimes, when you least expect it, a cartoon will switch things up completely, finding a new style that makes things a little easier on the artist, while reminding the audience that their trust can be shattered and betrayed at any moment. Kinda like this. A few weeks ago, I broke down when the animation in a show can change for better or worse, and all the reasons why, which y'all seem to really like. So today, I want to take a look at the other thing that can make or break a cartoon. It's art style. Taking a gander at some of the most infamous changes, some changes throughout franchises, good or bad, the reasons why they can happen, and the impact they can have on future projects. Why can characters get a drastic makeover late in the game? Why do some cartoons look so different between the pilot and the series? And why'd they put that dragon on Ozempic? All these questions and more will be answered today, after I shout out Roundtable Rewind, a channel featuring Roundtable videos old and new, re-edited into themed compilations that are perfect for studying, sleeping, and procrastinating as you avoid texting back that one situationship. The latest one on Disney got a barrage of claims, so if you want to peep the Steven Universe or Gravity Falls one, I'd appreciate it. But enough e-begging, let's dive in. The most infamous example of an art style change is without a doubt Disney's American Dragon Jake Long.
People are asking me, what's new about American Dragon this year? Hello, new body.
Looking back, it's crazy how Disney tried to ease us into the new style by gaslighting? Prior to Season 2's premiere, I vividly remember hitting up Disney Channel's website, only to discover that they updated all of American Dragon's promotional art to reflect the updated designs. As if the show always looked like this. But if you close your eyes... Hey buddy, I might be 7 and stupid, but I'm not dumb. This was a change that was really hard to miss. While the original had its own flair, it still fit right in with its peers. It's hard to convey, but there was a look to it that screamed Disney. It's all in the line weight, the shapes of their heads and eyes, the expressions they make, and the overall design philosophy. Fu looks like a Disney dog. The Dark Dragon seems like he'd be kicking it with the likes of Chernobog or Dragon Maleficent. I guess what I'm trying to say is, none of the characters would look out of place in a House of Mouse episode. Season 1's look was like 80% Disney, 20% anime, while Season 2 pretty much looks nothing like a Disney cartoon, as its anime influence is a lot more prominent. The designs were simplified, more angular with lots of sharp edges. Heads blend into necks, clothes are more form-fitting, leaving little room for details like creases. And practically every character now has a little glimmer in their eyes, leaning more into that anime influence. But the change that soured a lot of people on this new look is of course Jake's dragon form. Shifting from tall and jacked to relatively small and slender. He went from fitness goals to how I was built on Adderall. What gives? Well, we have a play-by-play of what went down from executive producer Steve Loader, who made this change in the first place. Unearthed from the lost civilization, known as the American Dragon message boards. Way back when Jeff Good created American Dragon and brought it to Disney, he was paired with 2 artists, the ultra nice guy Dave Filoni, and me. I was going to produce and direct the pilot, so Jeff and I worked on creating Jake's world. It was a little different then. We came up with the original designs and look of the show, and much of that look still exists in the first season. Time passed, things happened, and another ultra nice guy was brought in to direct the show, Chris Roman. Chris took my designs and made it his own, like any talented artist would. Time passed again, and I was asked to direct and produce the new season of Amdrag. I had a difficult task ahead of me. The ratings for Drag were good, but they could be better. It's a great show, but it needed a fresh new outlook to bring in people that may not tune in to a second season of a running show. I wanted to pull the show in a different direction. We needed a new look to suit the new style of storytelling we wanted to tell. The show was to become more cinematic, more designed, and I wanted to apply new rules to the world of Jake. So I pulled out the original designs from way back and I looked at the fine work that Chris Roman had done and I analyzed it. I wanted to make the show that Jeff and I envisioned at the very beginning. I hired a brilliant character designer, Eric White, whose previous claim to fame was the terrific designs for the as yet unseen Buffy the Vampire Slayer animated series and the comic book illustrations for the OC. I also wanted to create a new logic. The Jake Dragon design was a big concern. Jake is a 14 to 16-year-old boy. He is short and kinda scrawny. When he transformed into a dragon, he would transform into a 14 to 60-year-old short and scrawny dragon. Dragon muscles would not pop up from nowhere. He still needs to grow into an adult dragon. I would love the show to last forever, and you would watch Jake grow and mature into the big bad dragon that he is. If I started as a fully buff and ripped dragon, we would have nowhere to evolve to. That was logic that makes sense to me. Changing these designs took a lot of thought and care. So in essence, the style of the show has somewhat evolved into the original idea that Jeff and I had in the first place. And he's spittin'. If you look at concept art, it does align a bit more with the angular designs found in the second season. I know it's unusual that a show has a running change in style, but it has been done before. Bruce Timm's Batman is a perfect example of how a style shifted into the definitive version of how we now remember a TV series. Definitive? Calm down, my guy. We also took great care in how the animation actually moves. The acting is more expressive, and the creatures are more fantastical. This is an exciting new world that is inspired by Cowboy Bebop, Batman, Buffy, Samurai Champloo, and other most definitive sci-fi fantasy TV. Series creator Jeff Good mentioned another huge advantage to this redesign in an interview with Slash Film. The show got to level up in the action department. The new design meant cooler fight scenes. The thinner look meant the animators were allowed to give Jake more dynamic movements and slicker fights, which was more expensive and took longer to animate. While I really respect the vision he had for Jake's evolution, I do think it's strange that he essentially wanted to reboot Jake's visual progress while committing to the lore and continuity established in season 1. And that's how I feel about a lot of the redesigns. They aren't bad, but they're odd choices to make in a second season. I know Loader brought up Batman, but at least they rebranded it into a new show when they changed the bulk of the designs, and there was a 2-year gap between those shows. It's a lot more jarring when it's still considered the same series, and there are barely 5 months between seasons. Jake's dragon form was the change that stuck with everyone, but all the Hunts clan got redesigned, with their uniforms composed of a purple, maroon, and red color scheme instead of green, brown, and gray. They now all wear masks that expose their eyes, whereas before their eyes were shrouded in darkness with a red glow for the cool factor. While I vibe more with the season 2 Hunts clan, the Huntsman himself got done dirty. He's just kind of a dork now. Why did he have to lose the glowing eyes? He's the big bad. He deserves to keep them. I straight up hate the new look for the Oracle twins though. I get they wanted to lean more into their differences, but they don't even look like sisters anymore. They can have different hair colors and everything, but at least retain some sort of resemblance. Overall though, unlike most people, I prefer this art style and everything it does aesthetically. I get that Jake's dragon form might be a downgrade, but I love how he and the other dragons have color-coded aura when transforming. Blue for Jake and Gramps, pink for Haley, which matches her new dragon form. It adds a lot more personality. In general, season 2 runs circles around the first in the color department. I also think a lot of designs got improved, like Rose and Brad. Although the new looks for the students make it hard to buy that this is in middle school and not high school. That was definitely executive meddling. And then you have some that are just kind of whatever, like Rotwood or the Dark Dragon. The season 2 art style feels a lot more distinct, even if you could make an easy argument for why the OG's better. I honestly think if they just kept Dragon Jake buff, people would be kinder to the redesigns, but it is what it is. Before Jake Long, the Cape Crusader held the title of having a cartoon of controversial redesigns. But unlike American Dragon, there's an argument to be made that these redesigns had an insane domino effect as it informed the look of an entire animated universe. And it all started with Bruce Timm's Batman the Animated Series. According to the book Batman Animated, published in '98, the look of the early seasons was something that came together quickly thanks to the talented Eric Radomski. Bruce and Eric tried to develop a style that looked timeless, and they absolutely succeeded. When most people think about Batman, this is the first iteration that comes to mind. This is the definitive look for Batman. So why'd they screw with it? After existing solely through reruns for a couple of years, Batman returned in '97, now on Kids WB, rebranded as The New Batman Adventures. And everyone got a makeover. Some big, some small, some what the fuck. Was this some weird mandate from Kids WB? Nah, they just kinda wanted to. The pickup by the network was good news for the Bat Crew because we loved the show. Unfortunately, we'd be without producer Eric Radomski, who had left Warner a few years before to go to HBO Animation. A number of other key talents had left the studio for other high-profile projects as well. They were all missed when production began on Warner's new animated adventure show, Superman. While Superman boasted a number of visual similarities to Batman, the characters were even more streamlined than their Gotham City cousins. villains. Bruce Timm had simplified his animation design to bring a sleeker, more futuristic look to Superman's world, and he was pleased with the results. Now turning his attention to Batman once again, Bruce wasn't content with simply repeating the old look of the series, and he began experimenting with the character designs, starting first with the Dark Knight himself. Figuring the years between the series had made Batman much darker emotionally, Bruce dropped all color from his costume, keeping him in gray and black, with an unadorned bat chest emblem strikingly reminiscent of the character's first comic book costume. Once Bruce was happy with Batman, he moved on to Bruce Wayne, slicking back his hair, putting him in a sharp black suit, and removing all excess wrinkles and bulges.
Where's my dick at?
Batman's notorious rogues gallery was next on Bruce and art director Glenn Murakami's list for redesign. They proceeded to slim the villains down, change colors, eliminate details, and in some cases, rethink them from the ground up, garbing the Joker only in green and purple. Bruce narrowed his eyes to twin evil dots, giving him the likeness of a grinning skull. Although more limited in his design, the new look Joker retains every bit of his manic personality, though his trademark red lips would be omitted in the final model. I'm really conflicted on these redesigns, as although I do think a lot of them are inferior to their counterparts in the first 3 seasons, they also introduce a lot of elements found in Justice League's art style. Although the proportions are less realistic than before, I do think that purely from a design perspective, it has much more of an identity. For example, Baby Doll doesn't look like she walked right out of Animaniacs anymore. Now you can take one look at her and tell she's from the DCAU. But I do think the finer details in the OG art style gives it the edge when it comes to what people prefer. While these redesigns were absolutely more animation friendly, as just about everyone has a lot less going on, it fell into the same trap that Jake Long did, where, while a lot of these redesigns were good or kinda whatever, there were a handful that stood out as, dog shit. My main beef is with Joker and Catwoman. They look so inhuman now. I get the logic in giving Selina Batman eyes, but why does her costume turn her into Android 19? When she's out of costume, though. Need I say more? Joker's also not cutting it for me. Giving him black eyes with white pupils and spacing apart his eyebrows just took away so much emotion from the character, which sucks because Joker's expressiveness was the best part about seeing this character in animated form. How much thought was given to continuity during the transition of Batman the Animated Series to the new Batman Adventures? Were the creators interested in, say, explaining the Penguin's radical makeover, or were these issues you felt best unexplained? No, I think that was all from the desires of Bruce Timm and the other artists and directors to vary the look of the characters somewhat between iterations. Partially, it was to make it a little more like the new look of the Superman animated series, but also to just experiment and refine a few things. That tradition of visual reinvention has always been a part of Warner Bros. Animation. No one ever asked about Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck getting visually redesigned over the years. It was just something the directors did over time. Deanie, my guy, you cannot compare Bugs getting a bit more stylized to Riddler becoming a Dan Henschel character. A lot of these designs are drastic departures. Just own it instead of going, will Burger King change their logo? Still, these redesigns laid the foundation for the look of the entire DCAU. Justice League, Static Shock, Batman Beyond, all of them have their own quirks, but it's clear that they used the new Batman Adventures as a starting point. You take one look at them and know exactly what you're in for. Hell, while Teen Titans has more of an anime influence than other DC tunes, and isn't a part of the animated universe, it's still obvious that they drew a lot from Timm's later style. And speaking of mixing elements from the East and West, let's talk about Baby's first power fantasy, Ben 10. Ben 10 is a franchise that's known for switching up its art style. Nearly every show has its own distinct look, and I think that's for a very simple reason. Each series has a style that matches its tone. It's no secret that Ben 10 is heavily influenced by comics. The show itself makes that abundantly clear. And you know, the original idea had Ben turn to superheroes instead of aliens, but people often say Ben 10 looks a lot like anime, or more so, faux anime. You know, those French and American cartoons that imitate the look of anime. And it's easy to see why Ben 10 fell into that category. A lot of the characters have spiky hair. A lot of the head shapes, eye shapes, and the glimmer within the eyes were all something you'd find more in anime than cartoons. At least back then. But honestly, that's where the anime influence ends. Everything else feels like something that was a bit more inspired by other superhero superhero cartoons. I see more of the DCAU or 90s Spider-Man in this cartoon than something like Dragon Ball or any of the bangers airing on Toonami back then. That said, I could totally see Ben 10 having that faux anime look because, yeah, anime was poppin' at that time. They saw the numbers for DBZ and would start to see the numbers for Naruto. It just makes sense they would want a show that would be appealing to anime kids without isolating their target demographic. Though Dave Johnson, who designed Ben, Gwen, the first 12 aliens, and so many others, never gave a straight answer on if he was truly influenced by anime or not. That art style really fits the original series though. That thing was a kid magnet, and you could tell it was refined to be as badass yet toyetic as possible. Ben has aura.
I will now drain my mother's life-saving soul and everything with his name on it.
But then there's Ben 10 Alien Force and Ultimate Alien, which saw the story get a bit more serious with a time skip to boot. So the art style matured alongside Ben, leaning harder into its superhero influence as the characters look a lot closer to the likes of Justice League, while retaining a few elements that were unique to Ben 10. And it makes sense, as its executive producer was none other than Glenn Murakami, who worked on a handful of DCAU shows after Batman. But then you get to Omniverse, a show that wasn't as serious as Alien Force or Ultimate Alien, instead seeking out a stronger balance of action and comedy. Now, just like American Dragon and the new Batman adventures, Omniverse's art style was too hard of a pivot from what came before, and it drove off a lot of longtime fans. But this is one of my favorite looks for the series. I think the best way to describe it would be Ben 10 if it was made at Warner Bros. Instead of Cartoon Network. Although now there's no difference. And that's because this style reminds me a lot of shows that are being made over at WB, such as Teen Titans and Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Shows that art director and co-showrunner, the late but great Derek J. Wyatt, worked on prior. I'm not gonna waste time convincing you that Omniverse looks good if you don't like it, but if you enjoy the look of the two aforementioned shows, then hopefully you can appreciate what Omniverse has to offer. Though again, these style changes always have some redesigns that feel like they only exist to piss people off. Not as pissed as the reboot makes them though. Ben 10 2016, a show that definitely exists. Word through the grapevine is that the crew behind the reboot really wanted the show style to return to a stronger anime influence, maybe a bit more chibi. And the producers wanted Family Guy.
So, what's your superpower?
Kicking.
Oh, right, because none of us can kick.
The end result is a compromise that kinda just has it looking like a generic cartoon from the time. I made a whole video about this years ago, but thin lines, round eyes are the opposite of what I tend to vibe with. And that's the show's look to a T. I can't say much about the quality of the reboot writing-wise, but from art direction alone, it's hard to look at this and see anything more than a true downgrade. They literally drained all the edge from it. It just looks like a preschool show. It's way too cute to take seriously, which sucks when it's an action comedy, which was the curse for a lot of reboots at the time. Powerpuff Girls 2016 also butchered the unique UPA art style and reduced it to something infantilizing. Everyone who was copy and pasted from the original series looks fine, just rounder, but all the original characters? They're just lame. These girls used to jump Mojo Jojo for a quick fix. Why do I feel like they're about to teach me the ABCs? It kinda made everything out of pocket in this reboot feel that much more appalling. Teen Titans Go obviously looks kiddier than the original series, as everyone got chibified, but I actually dig the show's art style. It's just a simplified, more colorful version of the original series, but that allows it to still feel unique. The thick outlines definitely help it stand out. For kids, I think this is a good art style that lets you know this is a comedy, while still trying to maintain a bit of a cool factor. ThunderCats is a series that was lucky enough to get 2 controversial makeovers. The 2011 series, which definitely had that faux anime look, and ThunderCats Roar, which, what happened to Shame? They do some neat stuff with the animation thanks to the simple designs, but I just don't think it looks good. But I am one of the weirdos who prefer the 2011 style over the original by a long shot. But that's probably because I'm not big on how a lot of these 80s cartoons look. Like, why are these cats so anatomically correct? And the 2011 ones just have way more personality to me. I'm sure all the old heads just clicked off this video, but I gotta speak my truth. And then there's franchises like Scooby-Doo, which have a lot of iterations that tend to refine the original style with minor changes here and there, but it also has plenty of iterations that tend to do something crazy with its art direction. While What's New Scooby-Doo and the plethora of direct-to-DVD movies aren't that far off from how Scooby-Doo Where Are You looked, series like A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, Mystery Incorporated, and Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue all do their own thing with these characters. A Pup Named Scooby-Doo makes them look like Schoolhouse Rock characters, while Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue kinda reminds me of a lot of 2000s adult animation. Like, does anyone else see a little bit of Clerks in this? It's a little hard to explain, but I don't think I'd be fazed by seeing an Adult Swim logo slapped onto the bottom of a clip. There's Family Guy Scooby-Doo. There's the one you're not allowed to say anything nice about. You even got the upcoming Go-Go Mystery Machine, which has a heavy anime influence. I'm reserving judgment for when we see something other than this key visual, though.
Might I inquire, what happened to your noses?
Actually,
These sausage-looking dealies, right here.
we get it!
The style of Steven Universe's pilot is the closest thing we've gotten to seeing Rebecca Sugar's comics come to life. I'm obsessed with her art style. I love how her designs and expressions manage to be cool, creepy, and goofy all at the same time. The biggest difference between the pilot and the main series is that the pilot maintains more realistic proportions and the designs have a lot more detail. I know I haven't drawn much attention to backgrounds in this video, but since Steven sticks out more than most cartoons, I couldn't help but notice that the backgrounds in the pilot kinda look like they were ripped straight out of a comic. It's worth pointing out because comics were Sugar's first love, and it's obvious that she really wanted to replicate the look of her own comics into an animated series, much like how Jonan Vasquez did with Invader Zim, which was a huge inspiration for Sugar. Of course, animating a full season of television in this art style at broke-ass Cartoon Network wasn't going to be sustainable.
$7?
So they simplified the designs and formed an art style that still pulls from Sugar's signature look while making the most of an animated medium, when it's not animated by Rough Draft. While I know a lot of people prefer the pilot style, and I absolutely adore it, I wouldn't trade the final look of the show for anything when it's not animated by Rough Draft. Revising the designs allowed the characters to stick out a lot more from each other. For example, in the pilot, all the characters have the same two slit nostril noses as Steven, and just about everyone shares those two Link-esque cat eyes, whereas those features are a lot more varied in the series, giving us Pearl's iconic dagger of a nose. And as much as I love long hair Garnet, the afro just can't be beat. It's so satisfying to look at and draw. Amethyst might be the one design where I truly prefer the pilot over the series, but she also had the smallest changes compared to the other two gems. Then there's shows like OKKO, where the style shifted with the times. The pilot, Lakewood Plaza Turbo, fits right in with a lot of cartoon-era comedies from the early 2010s, while still standing on its own. It almost looks a little Newgroundsy, which makes sense, given Ian's origins with both webcomics and web animations. But the main series falls in line with that simplified, cutesy art style a lot of shows in the later half of the decade featured, yet it works a lot better for KO than its peers. This style fits KO's innocent worldview, and it enables the characters to be even more expressive than they were before. It can be wholesome, it can be silly, it can be cool, it can be grotesque. To quote creator Ian JQ, the show is based on the idea of a world of notebook doodles and amateur fan art come to life, which is why we chose to draw it this way. Not to mention the final look has a lot more sauce than the original series, as the line art has a pencil texture, and by the third season, there's a beautiful grain that makes everything look so good. Finally, there's Gravity Falls, which has some pretty drastic differences between the pilot and main series. My gut reaction to the pilot style is, wow, this looks Canadian! Because it was produced in Canada. Shout out to House of Cool. But seriously, looking at this pilot still kind of blows my mind after watching the series 100 times over. What do you mean they used to look like this? The characters have more detail than in the final product. Things like the blush in their cheeks or the details in Dipper's hat. Dipper and Mabel also look older, more like teenagers, which is probably because they have slightly longer necks and Dipper's wing-like hair just changes the vibe. Stan looks awesome in this pilot. I definitely prefer how he looks in season 2 above any other look, but this original design feels a lot more personal. More Alex Hirsch than Alex Hirsch streamlining his styles so it's easier to animate. For as charming as this pilot style is though, it's hard to deny that the final series absolutely mogs it. The line weight, the detailed close-ups, and the backgrounds that make you want to overanalyze every frame, it's simplified, but not simple. The look of the pilot will always pique my curiosity, as I can't help but wonder what characters like Gideon, Ford, or even Bill would have looked like, but it's something I could never dwell on for too long. And there you have it. I didn't get to touch on every show I wanted to, as a lot of the changes came down to the same reason, streamlining things for animation, but I think I managed to touch on most of the big ones. And TMNT fans, let me live for another day. What show do I think looks better from the rest? You'll never know. That said, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please sort a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace.